Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another round of Modern Melee here in the booth with Marco and Ginko.
Hello, everyone.
What do we have today, Marco?
We have spicy one. I will stop saying spicy because everything is spicy to me. So we have very interesting matchup. Let's say it's interesting. It's Enchantress versus Death and Taxes.
Death and Taxes is very rarely seen, and if I may add, a deck that is also extremely hard to pilot, one that has the ability to be either the best or the worst deck in the format, depending on the format, but also depending on who it is piloting the deck. Not because the pilot needs to be omnipotent, but they have to know what they're doing. Because Death and Taxes is a deck that has a lot of small advantages throughout the game. On the other side, we have Enchantress, which is a deck that wants to spew as much enchantments on the battlefield and just win by a lock and a combo involving either an Emrakul, hardcast, and taking almost infinite turns, or one is usual enough, or just smashing face with giant creatures that came from the enchantments.
None of these decks are very
Explosive.
yeah, definitely not explosive. But what I wanted to say, you don't see these decks often in the modern meta.
Exactly, they're not prevalent.
No, you can argue that Enchantress is a weak deck even in the format, but I think it can take some unexpected wins even against tier one decks.
Oh, I wouldn't say weak. This is a strategy that is known throughout legacy format as well as through modern format, especially after Modern Horizons 2 injected all of the pieces needed for an Enchantress deck to function into the format itself. But what is interesting with this deck is that it needs some fast mana production in terms of Utopia, Sprawl, or others to get them started, because they have several pieces that they need to have. So how this deck functions is they put up something like Enchantress's Presence or Sythis, the Harvest's Hand. Both do the same thing and are better in multiples. So what they do is whenever you cast an enchantment, you draw a card. That is the main purpose of those spells. And with more and more enchantments, more and more cards you can draw, and more mana you can get. On the other hand, we see just a Giver of Runes and Stoneforge Mystic from the Death and Taxes player. For now, they also need a little bit of setting up. Both very grindy decks, both very capable of just dominating the late game. We see another Utopia Sprawl getting put on the same forest, and a beautiful head poking into the camera view, trying to see what the Giver of Runes does and which card this is. Might be it is on another language, or just the player is not familiar with the exact concept of one. And we see an Oblivion Ring that could have been avoided just if the Giver of Runes didn't attack for one.
Interesting attack by the Giver of Runes. Interesting.
So punished for just one damage.
Yeah. So what do you think about this? Is Ontinai's better than Oblivion Ring?
Oh, I mean, I do think that as we see, the land base is mostly snow-covered, so I do think there are 4 on thin ice. But if you need a little bit more oomph, then Oblivion Ring as a 1-off or 2-off is extremely good to be able to get rid of any permanent you want, especially in the main deck, because as we said, both of those decks are very capable of going extremely late and having an extremely heavy late game, with Urza Saga from the Death and Taxes player, with several card draw in white that are semi-card draws or in terms of the Enchantress player, in just locking out the game with Solitary Confinement and other Enchantress pieces.
And it's a very bad feeling when Solitary Confinement lands. The opponent usually feels very helpless, and if Enchantress's presence or two is on the board, it's very, very hard to stop.
Exactly. The whole engine.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we saw two Set of Sanctum in creature form Sanctum Weavers getting played. Next turn there will be a lot of mana for the enchantment player. And on the other hand, the Death and Taxes player just plays Kaldra Complete via the Stoneforge Mystic and smashes in for 5 damage. And of course, the Enchantress player is not interested in any blocks. And now let's count out the mana. There is, there is a Path to Exile before anything goes in the upkeep.
Okay, interesting.
Yes, one of the win conditions being making your lands into giant creatures with this card. This is the primary win condition from the Enchantress deck. Once they are satisfied with the copious amounts of mana they can make via the Sanctum Weavers, or the massive card draw and advantage that they get from the Enchantress's presence or Sythis Harvest Hand. When they are ready, they can just drop the Solitary Confinement and attack for northwards of 50 damage.
Very, very, very dangerous, definitely. But setting up to this point is, I would say it's obvious. You know when it's going to happen.
Exactly.
The thing that is frustrating is usually you can't do anything to stop it.
Exactly.
When it comes to that.
And we see Solitary Confinement hitting the table. We are in for a long game. Buckle up, folks. This can be a long one. We hope not too long. But we will see, actually.
Well, we'll see, definitely. But since we are expecting a long game, I will take this time to invite everyone who likes our content to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have anything you want to say to us, any advice, any criticism, please write down in comments, and we will be sure to respond.
Exactly. And while you were busy doing this magnificent segue, we counted out the mana that those Sanctum Weavers do. It's actually 7 mana a piece. This is the best Birds of Paradise ever printed. Almost.
Almost.
Exactly.
Okay, so we see a very, very stacksy game. Both decks are somewhat stacksy. What is it that Death and Taxes wants to do to win?
So Death and Taxes wants to do two things. Death and Taxes, not in these orders, but they want to tax the opponent via something like Talia, via something like Esper Sentinel, which is a great addition to this deck, and they want to smash face with, well, not smash face, more like tickle face with a lot of creatures like Giver of Runes, like Flicker Wisp, like Talia, and they just want to disrupt the opponent every step of the way, not give them any time to breathe. We see their Ether Vial to help with mana production as well, and then we have some extremely impactful artifacts in form of Kaldra Complete, also in form of newly printed Shadow Spear, and also maybe even the a little bit outdated Better Skull even. I say outdated because if you have several ways of tutoring, then probably Shadow Spear provides better ability to gain life, and Kaldra Complete provides a better beat stick.
Very interesting. I never thought about Batterskull versus Shadow Spear, and when you put it like that, it does seem like the Shadow Spear is a bit more flexible. But,
Exactly.
But you know, Batterskull has a very important ability. It costs 3 mana and you return it to your hand.
Exactly.
And that is something that is worth noting, especially after sideboards when there is a lot of artifact hate.
That is correct. However, Kaldra Complete is indestructible. That is also something to keep in mind. Both
Yeah, but
the gem token and the Caldra Complete.
yeah, but I meant the Batterskull.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
You can return it, but as I said, if there is mass artifact destruction, Caldra Complete both, as well as the token would stay intact. But I get it. I know what you are referring to. In my opinion and in my practice with Death and Taxes decks, it has not come up as much because now you also, for those 3 mana that you would return the Batterskull, you have a Saga activation, you have other things to do with your mana. This deck is extremely mana hungry. It is not obvious from the amount of small creatures that you have in this deck, but this deck can gobble up as much mana as you can give it.
Okay, interesting.
This is one of the reasons why it plays Aether Vial, and we are talking all of this throughout the turn of the of the Enchantress player, who still has not finished resolving all of their spells and drawing all the cards. Now they have 2 engines online. One of them is Sythis, the other one is the Enchantress's presence. So each enchantment they play, they gain 1 life and they draw 2 cards. The only saving grace is that they have 10 life, but they are able to animate the land, and I do believe this is northwards of 50 damage. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I believe the land would be a 10-10. Let's see. Exactly. It is a 10-10 creature, enchantment creature, and just smash its face. The Death and Taxes player is not interested in blocking as well. As long as it is not lethal, it is fine, they say. And this is another lock piece from the enchantment player. This is Sterling Grove, an enchantment that gives all other enchantments hexproof, and you can sack it for 1 colorless mana and go get an enchantment on top of your deck. And this is also a new addition from Modern Horizons 2. Now, let's see how the Death and Taxes player will cope with all of this.
Is there any way he can cope?
I mean, there are ways involving something like a Flicker Wisp or something to blink out several enchantment pieces, but with Sterling Grove, this also becomes less accessible. The other thing is they can probably block, because as much permanence as the Enchantress player has, they have only 1 legible threat. And the win condition is animating lands into creatures. So if the Death and Taxes player has something to mitigate that damage, then several turns later they could turn this into a win. Chances are slim.
I imagine that this is this situation is a great example why Shadowspear would be better than Batterskull, because Shadowspear has also the ability to remove indestructible from opponents.
Not only that, but it also has trample
built
into it.
Lifelink, yeah.
Exactly. So a little bit of life, a little bit of trample, a little bit of pumping is all that you need from such an important piece. And one also saving grace is that it is fetchable with the Urza Saga, which this deck plays 4 of. So again, the Enchantress player making roughly 300 mana with those 2 Sanctum Weavers, and we will see what they will do. So they probably just animate several lands and crash in for 30-40 damage.
Yeah, I don't see how the Death and Taxes player can turn this around, unfortunately. But I am usually a pessimist in these videos, and I'm not always correct. I'm rarely correct. So we'll see.
Yes, and we see now a popular move that is called encroachment, where one player just takes up so much space from the playmat that it is encroaching on the side of the other player, and this is also a sign, show of strength from the player, and we see 4 lands getting animated, maybe even 5, and attacking for a whole bunch. Yes, exactly. And the Texas player, having nothing better to do, sends the lands that are 10/10s over to themselves. And what do we have here? This is a Stoneforge activation for a Better Skull. Ta-da! Maybe there is a chance of blocking one, getting 4 life, and surviving this turn. What do we have here? Maybe another Path to Exile. Exactly, another Path to Exile that is 10 less damage to take. There is also a Utopia Sprawl
on that land that is that land now.
Exactly. And now we have only 30 damage to worry about, but it's still 30 damage.
It's not exactly lethal. I guess if he double blocks, or rather not double blocks, if he blocks one land with the Batterskull and one land with Giver of Runes.
Maybe give protection to the Batterskull from, I do think that those lands become green. So, but no.
Okay.
I do not think they have trample, but this is just the abyss that can happen over and over again every turn. From now on, the Enchantress player has northwards of 30 mana, and they can just sink it into their engine and smash face. So this is it from round 1. Now on to sideboards. There are some interesting cards to sideboard, interesting cards to side out. For example, we see a consideration of Pithing Needle in the main deck, just a courtesy of Urza Saga, as well as some other things, probably something like Graveyard Recursion or Graveyard Hate will also come out from the Death and Taxes player. And from the Enchantress player, probably something, a light trim on their engines, and they will probably take in more creature removal.
Yeah, so it seems that that Texas player is siding out Pithing Needle.
Relic of Progenitus I see as well in the maybe pile of siding out, and probably some other stuff.
Oh, I think that Pithing Needle can have some use in the deck. Maybe
it's not a dead card, exactly. Yeah. But maybe there are more impactful cards to bring in. For example, I saw their Skyclave Apparition, which is a great piece to remove any Enchantress piece. I do think this list plays Engineered Explosives, which is a weird addition to the mono white deck, but this deck can actually go up to 4 different colors of mana. It plays all the lands that are one color on one side and the other one on the other side from Kaldheim, and also some sack lands to draw cards. And with them, they can produce up to 4 colors of mana.
I imagine that you play Engineered Explosives after siding, especially if you are on the draw. But I see that also on the play is acceptable.
Well, I would say that this is a matchup that will go one of 2 ways. Either the Death and Taxes player can stacks them out, and the match will be done before the Enchantress player can do anything of importance. Or we have another route that will just be tedious and long, and it will be back and forth. And one of few ways of victory for the Death and Taxes player in that regard would be an Engineered Explosives on 2 or 3, because most of their enchantments are 2 and 3 mana, except from the quote-unquote mana rocks or mana enchantments that they play on their lands. So these engineered explosives might be a sentiment to just the inability of a mono white deck to cope with the excessive amounts of permanence such a deck can have on the battlefield.
Yeah. When you put it like that, it makes a lot of sense, actually. It seems like a strong card.
How you beat the Enchantress deck is either you don't care about the enchantment and smash face before they can do anything about it, or you can disrupt their engine pieces, which are Sythis and the Enchantress's presence. But for this particular thing to work, you need either counter spells or hand disruption, or you just blow everything up. And white gets one of those things.
And looking at Enchantress, what kind of creature removal does it side in? Path of Exiles?
Journey to Nowhere.
Journey to Nowhere, interesting. Another Oblivion Ring version.
Yes, exactly. So they probably have 4 copies of Only Nice. They also might have 1 extra Oblivion Ring in the sideboard. And I know they have at least 2 Journey to Nowheres in the sideboard as well. And they can bring them all in. They're not only good against the creature side of the Death and Taxes deck, but also against the artifact side of the Death and Taxes deck. Most importantly, Aether Vial.
Indeed.
Because Aether Vial is one of the cards that gives the inevitability to the Death and Taxes in terms of mana generation. How the Death and Taxes player can cope with the excessive mana generation from the Enchantress player is by having more Aether Vial effects. But there is also the ability of the Death and Taxes player to just side out the Aether Vials in lieu of more impactful cards. Because, as we said, this will probably be a very long matchup. And if it is more than several turns long, then drawing just Aether Vial on turn 5 is a dead draw.
It's a very, very, very bad draw on turn 5, indeed. But we see a good opening from the Death and Taxes player, because turn 1 Esper Sentinel is a thing of dreams.
Yeah, exactly. Into turn 2 Talia, suddenly in.
Yeah, great. Also, worth noting, Esper Sentinel drew a card already, so that's also great. And what do you think about Esper Sentinel?
Esper Sentinel is still underplayed. As much as it is played, it is still underplayed card.
It's I would almost say it's under a curse of being a white card.
Exactly, you're not wrong. If this were a blue card, it would be in any Delver variant ever. If this was a red card with the appropriate shifting into the red card draw, quote unquote, it would be in any red deck ever. Both of those cards have ways to draw cards, especially red with the impulse draw, blue with just pure drawing stuff, but they do not have, they're always wanting for more, and they always can have another creature to just both smash face and have a card draw engine.
Indeed, a great card. I really, really like this card. But as you said, it would probably be even better in some other colors.
I am thankful that it's not.
Yeah, it could be probably a card that if it was blue might... we would get some bans in one.
Exactly.
Let's just put it that way.
And here we have a Skyclave Apparition taking out the mana production from Utopia Sprawl. Just sinkholing the opponent for 3 mana is still great, especially if they ramped and didn't play anything because of either Talia or Esper Sentinel or both. And this is one of the appeals of Death and Taxes decks.
Yeah. I to be completely honest with you, I really always liked the list of Death and Taxes. It plays very good cards. It is an interesting list. It never was, at least lately, it wasn't strong enough in my opinion. But what I see here on the board from Death and Taxes player is beautiful. It's simply what you want to put turn 1, 2, 3 as
exactly. It is beautiful, but it is also almost a magical Christmas land in terms of cards that you want to see on each individual turns. So if we had another taxing effect that wasn't Talia, that made, for example, creatures or just instant or sorceries cost one more from the opponent's side, this deck would be extremely playable. What I found this deck does actually is a lot of things imperfectly. It is stretched in several directions, all of which can be impactful, but if you just pull out the wrong half of your deck in wrong matchups, it can just be devastating. For example, if you play against Merfolk, they don't care about Talia, they don't care about Esper Sentinel, they don't care about any of those things, and you're just stuck with 8 cards basically in your deck that literally don't do anything. They are smaller than Merfolk, they're not impactful, they do not draw cards with Esper Sentinel, and you're stuck there. But against something like Storm, against something like Enchantress, against something like Izzet, Delver, or Murktide, or whatever variant you want to call it, they're just beautiful. As you said.
Okay, we see Solitary Confinement from the Enchantress player, and sacking the land, probably searching for an answer to this confinement.
Well, the good part, or the bad part, depending on which side you stand, of Solitary Confinement is that you cannot draw cards at the beginning of your draw step. You skip actually your draw step. You do not get a card for your troubles. And this card is basically worthless without any Enchantress effects.
It is true. It is true. It's a naked Solitary Confinement with no Enchantress presence or Sythis here. So, yeah, the value is questionable. Still, you want to have that removal in hand for when you need it.
Exactly. And here we see an engineered explosives for 3 from a mono white player. How they did this is with lands to sack cards, as we said, and lands to that are one color on one side and a white color on the other side. Doesn't matter which one, just so they have all or almost all the colors if they need it.
Okay, so the Enchantress player did release. Okay, and scooped.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. This is just the abyss. It is. They have to discard a card every turn, and they sack the Solitary Confinement. At their upkeep, they didn't want to skip their draw step, and they drew a card. It was nothing of importance, and we are going to game 3. So this round played out as we said from the first scenario. The Death and Taxes player did their job. They taxed and then dealt death to the opponent. And this was all before the Enchantress player could do anything of importance, anything to impact the game fully. But we saw if there was an Enchantress's presence or a Sythis on the battlefield, it could have gone in the wrong direction or in the right direction if you are rooting for the Enchantress player.
Indeed.
So a turn or 2 later, and they could have gotten the win.
Okay, so now we have Enchantress player on the play, and I don't know much about this deck, but I don't think the strategy is much different whether you are on the play or on the draw.
Exactly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do imagine that on the draw, Death and Taxes player wants to play a different game. And what is that game?
Well, so first of all, we saw neither of those players having any sideboard changes. That means that neither of those players are well prepared for the other deck, which is not unusual because neither of those decks are neither tier 1 nor very popular to be in need of having a sideboard slot just for them. So several generic answers probably from both decks are in the main board now, and they will stay there during the game 2 and 3. But as you said, now that the Enchantress player is on the play, the Death and Taxes player finds themselves in a different position, and that is they need to stack the mana production. Because they will probably be a turn late with Talia and stacking effects to fully take advantage of them, as they did in game 2, as they had Esper Sentinel into Talia. But now they need to do something a little different. And we saw several cards there. I do think there was a land that gets rid of another land. There was some removal there from the Death and Taxes player. What do we see? Meanwhile, okay. There is the Utopia Sprawl.
Yeah.
Oh, there is also Esper Sentinel. Still not bad. Definitely not bad. From the Death and Taxes player. That means that if the Enchantress player wants to play their 3 mana spell on turn 2, they will have to give a card to Death and Taxes player.
Well, it needs to be noted that there is 3 mana here, and he can't pay for this. Esper Sentinel, now he played Sythis. And he put the card down.
He slammed the card down. Go.
Okay.
Some friendly banter between the players as well, and we will see the next one. So this is a Field of Ruin into Talia. So we have a return of turn 1 Esper Sentinel to turn 2 Talia from the Death and Taxes player, which is actually a great start. Even on the draw.
Yeah, the return of Magical Christmas Land. Yeah, I like that. It sounds very, very warm. And,
now let's see.
Okay, here we finally have...
So we have the taxing effect on Thin Ice, costs 2, +1 for Esper Sentinel. We see another hand. Yes, so just to have everything under control... So Sythis triggers on casts, so the Enchantress player drew a card before wanting to pay for Esper Sentinel or not, and they decide not. They got another life, and now with the remaining mana, they played another Utopia Sprawl, draw a card from Sythis, gain another life. But I see something. A Ghost Quarter.
Oh, Ghost Quarter, very good draw. But by the way, this must
this hurts. And we see the land thrown together with all of the enchantments on that land. Ghost Quarter doesn't care if it's a basic land or not, in contrast to Field of Ruin, but I'm almost sorry for the Enchantress player, but actually not.
Okay, so Ghost Quarter is something that Death and Taxes usually plays in main.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Ghost Quarter, so one of the appeals of a mono-white deck such as Death and Taxes is that you have a lot of utility lands that can be a powerful engine in mid to late game. One of them is Field of Ruin. The second of them, maybe even better one, is Ghost Quarter. So Ghost Quarter is... just if you need to pull the trigger on something like a turn 3 Throne or whichever land is most prevalent, or something like a Urza Saga that will go rampart, you have the inevitability of a Ghost Quarter. On the other hand, but it also leaves you a land behind, in contrast to the opposing player, who does get to search up a basic land. On the other hand, Field of Ruin is symmetrical, and both of you and your opponent get to search up a basic land. What this means for the Death and Taxes player is basically nothing changes. And for the opposing player, they have the most important land less on the battlefield. This can mean one color less, or screwing off a color, or this can mean delaying the throne player for just another turn to smash face enough to go through all those pesky 7 mana cards or whichever thing you need. Now we see Skyclave Apparition taking out Sythis, and it is Smash Face time.
Smash Face!
Exactly. This is the second best part of the Death and Taxes. On the right, we see now some hesitance from the Enchantress player. There is, I wouldn't say a lot of pressure, but very impactful pressure from the other side.
Indeed. So he is trying to decide which creature will go on thin ice.
Exactly.
Okay. Decisions. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Good. All of those enchantments are still on one land, and that is it. So they paid for both Expert Sentinel and Talia. They exile Talia, and the game continues.
So there was this. Okay, so the Urza Saga is down, which is definitely great. Always you love to see it as the Urza Saga player. You love to see that card. But what I wanted to say prior to the Ghost Porter play, there was a turn where a lot of triggers happened.
But we see another great play. Flicker Wisp flickering the land that had all of the enchantments.
Oh, no.
Talia getting back and just smashing face again. When the land comes, there will be no enchantments to put under the land, and this is another devastating blow for the Enchantress deck. I am terribly sorry. Do continue with your narration.
yeah. I just wanted to say there was a lot of triggers that happened in that turn, and if we missed something, we are sorry. Please do tell us in the comments. And again, so the Enchantress player is punished for the second time for stacking one land. I do see this often.
And we see game and match done. One of the saving graces for the Enchantress player is that they need to put their on thin ice on Snowland.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you probably want your mana ramp also on a basic, and they had only one basic left there. So the logical thing is to put them there, especially when they saw the Field of Ruin. If they put any enchantment on the other land, it would have been blown away. But this is all for this game and match. We hope you liked it, and as usual, like, comment, and subscribe.
Bye!